Joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show, fresh back from Las Vegas, Nevada, is my colleague who is killing it all week long with us in our draft coverage, Ian Rapoport, back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Rap Sheet?
I feel like I got hit by a truck, and I do all the fun things in Vegas that people do, but I'm back, and let's go.
It's amazing how sitting on your ass and thinking for 72 straight hours that you're on television and what you're doing, how actually mentally and physically debilitating that is. It really is amazing when you put it down that way.
I mean, yeah, and what I did this year was I brought the same thing I did last year, which was a Theragun, like one of those percussion massagers, just to make sure my body doesn't collapse on me in day 3, but I was too obsessed with getting booted off the show and having a bad stump the truck that I forgot to use my Theragun. So I was a mess in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, did you see that? Did you see that stump the truck moment, Chris? Did you see that?
I did not.
On our segment where everybody comes up with a name of a small school player that our truck does not have footage of, and that's very difficult to find because we've got the best in the business. Ian gave them the name of a player who went back to school. And he then said it was Mike Garafolo gave you that bad information.
That is correct. Yep.
And so then we Ed Marinara'd him off the show. We had somebody come and take him off the set. It was actually a very funny moment, Ian.
And it was also ridiculous because, we report a lot of things, and God forbid something goes wrong or a player doesn't sign like he's supposed to, or, something happens. If I'm at the center of it, my phone blows up. And so I'm like literally walking around our suite, again, to make sure my body doesn't collapse. And my phone explodes, and it's like, oh, no, Ian, what happened? And I'm like, what could I possibly have done? Like, what literally could it be? And then it was like, you ruined Stump the Truck. I'm like, oh, my God.
Hashtag.
Oh, my God.
Hashtag. Ian Rapoport here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, let's play the why didn't fill in the blank get traded. Why didn't Deebo get traded? Why did Deebo not get traded?
Because the 49ers didn't want to, and because they didn't get an offer that forced them to. So it's interesting these trade offers don't always get made public, but once I knew Deebo wasn't happening on Friday morning, I mentioned what the offer was. And what's interesting about trade offers is you can actually go in the trade value chart and figure out, was it worth it, was it not? So, you can look at, let's say one team trades for another player. You can look at the trade value chart and be like, oh, wow, the Lions got a great deal on their Jameson Williams trade, for instance, whatever it is. And I looked up the Jets offer, which was it was a 1 and 111 for 61, I believe. And it's not quite the 13th overall pick, so they just didn't view it as a good enough offer. And the Lions' offer was, I think, a 1 and a 3, and the 49ers didn't view that as a good enough offer, and they wanted to keep the player anyway, so they just didn't trade him. And I think we were all waiting for what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Well, they can't take him back, and the 49ers we didn't get enough. We like the player. We'll fix it. But now it's going to get interesting just as far as how they actually fix it.
What needs fixing based on your information?
Just the relationship. And I think when a player, so much goes into asking to be traded. And I think, we've talked about his role. He doesn't want to be a running back. We talked about that. I'd say there was some other issues below the surface that, Deebo feels some sort of way about. We've seen it get fixed in the past. We've seen players, actually the 49ers have had a couple of them. Robbie Gould, I think, was one. Player Raheem Mostert was another who asked to be traded, then came back. So it's not impossible. And Lynch and Shanahan are very charismatic, so perhaps they could do it, but they got to bring Deebo back into the fold. And, they've been willing to do a contract. That generally helps people feel better. Like A.J. Brown didn't want to leave the Titans, just really, really liked the Titans. Eagles gave him a good opportunity, plus a huge bag of money, and that makes sometimes people feel better.
Ian Rapoport here on the Rich Eisen Show. Why didn't Baker Mayfield get traded over the weekend?
There were two reasons for that. One was they couldn't agree on money. They couldn't agree on how the salary would be split. And when we've seen these in the past, which obviously we saw one last year with Teddy Bridgewater, the Panthers were clearly moving on, so they had to deal him. And I think I can't remember the exact number. I thought it was split basically down the middle on his, $16 or $17 million salary, whatever it was. So one side took half, the other side took the other half. They gave him a late-round pick. Boom, Bridgewater traded. The problem here is that he has a little more value to the Browns because they may have to use him, or they may have to pretend they might have to use him, or Deshaun Watson might get suspended and they might really, really have to use him, which, people are having a hard time understanding, and I 100% agree. However, I would also argue maybe it makes sense for Baker Mayfield to be a starting quarterback again, even with the Browns, to redo his stock. So there's a lot going on here, and I think the Panthers at some point go, you know what? We're just going to take this rookie. We're just going to trade up and take this rookie. We're just going to move on from this whole thing. And so that's what they did.
So it was the Panthers that had the interest in
it was the Panthers, yeah. And I didn't get the sense that there was any other teams involved. And, we were talking on the broadcast Saturday about the Seahawks. I kind of never got the sense they were in the mix there.
So what's his option? It looks like he's not going anywhere until, he becomes the Sam Bradford for another team that needs him because their quarterback had a freak accident. I mean, you're banking on a freak accident or a suspension by, of Deshaun Watson. Those are his two best options to find work?
I think that's it. Banking on a freak accident or banking on, this sucks, but I'm going to have to go play for this team again. And there's so many different levels to this. Let's just say the Browns are good. I think they're going to be good. So let's just say Baker goes out there for 4 games. I have no idea what Deshaun Watson's suspension is going to be, if there is one, but just for the sake of this discussion, let's say it's 4 games. So then let's say he goes 3-1. Might somebody go, you know what? That looks like Baker of old. He's healthy. He's good. He's confident. Maybe I'll trade that guy midseason if I lose my quarterback. It's all good for him, even though it's a bad situation overall.
Ian Rapoport here on the Rich Eisen Show. Why did A.J. Brown get traded?
Because the Titans would not give him a contract that he would sign. I think what their contract offer to him was, it was up to $20 million a year. I remember the Eagles gave him $25 a year, but it was up to $20 million a year. But it was backloaded, so I think the first couple of years were $15 million or $16 million, something like that. So they wouldn't go up. And the Eagles had actually, under the radar, made a pursuit of him. And the Titans wouldn't engage. Once talks broke down, it was all right, we're either – and I think things really kicked into gear, ironically, kind of when I found out about it. Not that I had any – I'm just saying when I found out about it, 1 or 2 p.m., this was a really fast deal to get done. But it had to, because if you're going to trade for a 1, you got to do it in time to make the pick. And the Titans needed to be able to replace him. So once it was all right, talks are breaking down. We're not going to do this deal. Now we have to trade him because we got to get the pick back. So then it was really just a mad dash. And they got it done, and he got a really nice deal.
He did. And then the Titans were able to draft his exact comp, according to Daniel Jeremiah. So where does this...
I'm sorry to interrupt. Sure. I thought that was such a cool part of our show. It was as soon as it happened, I could hear Daniel Jeremiah laughing because he goes, "This is my exact comp." And I thought it was a perfect explanation for why it happened, how a team moves on. The whole thing was very cool.
Yeah, and he did it. Another one happened when Desmond Ridder gets drafted by Atlanta. His comp for Desmond Ridder is Marcus Mariota. And so, that happened multiple times during our 3 days, just a testament to how terrific Daniel is at evaluating and executing his vision for us as a broadcaster. But, to see this happen, though, where one team's I'll pay a guy going to his 4th year $25 million a year, and the other team's we're not doing it. As a matter of fact, we're going to draft his exact comp replacement here and have more contractual control at the amount of money that he might earn over the first 4 years of the deal is exactly the annual salary we were unwilling to pay somebody. I just find that fascinating to me, that this receiver position in the NFL and where it's going. Fascinating to me.
I am so with you. We've never really seen anything like this, where you have one side firmly convinced that, all right, there's a number at this position I will just not go higher than, even if it's my own guy who I love, who I drafted, who I could show everyone how right I was. for drafting this guy and pay him a bunch of money, and I just believe the value is too high. I'm not going to do it. And then you have another side who goes, I must have this guy. I don't care what I'll pay him. I'll make him the highest paid receiver and trade draft picks for him because that's how valuable he will be to us. And we're talking about the same player. And, like, there's not a lot of precedent for this where you have homegrown players who their team won't pay but have so much value to the outside world that they can get a first-round pick and more and a huge contract to get these guys. Like, it is as, like, diametrically opposed as anything we've seen in the NFL.
And I'm just wondering if we're ever going to see it, because we've seen that at running back position for quite some time, and we're kind of seeing it at the receiver position now. I'm wondering if we're ever going to see it at the quarterback spot. And, you know, right now, Kyler Murray's kind of on that clock. I had Steve Keim on the show over an hour ago. There's nowhere he couldn't have been more, adamant about not trading him and then open to paying him. Where do you think that actually is in between those lines right now, Ian?
As far as just how willing they are to pay him?
Yeah, and then at what freight, where does that come in? Like, what's that number now that you know another quarterback has gotten fully guaranteed over $230 million?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so interesting because, like, what Steve Keim doesn't want to do is to be like, well, we think he's awesome, but not quite as good as a bunch of other teams have. Like, you never want to do that. It's just hard to, you have to assess a value to it. So my guess is he gets somewhere in the early 40 range, with a chance to make it to Deshaun. But, it's one problem is he has, his limited playoff experience, limited playoff. I don't think he has a playoff win yet, right?
That's correct.
Doesn't. And so, like, he's going to get better, and he's taken this team to a great place, but he also doesn't have a ton of leverage because he's probably not getting traded, clearly not getting traded. And if he was, it was going to be before the draft. So my guess is they'll figure on some sort of figure before training camp, but this is definitely one of the harder ones to do. Whereas, like, we talk about Lamar Jackson's contract, which I don't think is coming anytime soon. Like, he's a former MVP who's awesome. Like, he's probably going to get all of the money. With Kyler, maybe it's a little different, but we'll see how close he gets.
And how much, before I let you go, we kind of had this discussion on Saturday on live television as well. Might as well have it here. How much more complicated does it make things for the Ravens, planning purposes, salary cap massaging purposes, to have Lamar not want to take the bag right now and maybe even go franchise tag year to franchise tag year until he feels that he's comfortable accepting the Ravens' generationally enriching contract offer? How does that affect things based on what you know?
It's weird because on one hand, it's great. Like, cheap again this year. Fifth-year option is cheap. Franchise tag's pretty cheap. So, like, all right, yeah, that's right. So this year's going into his fifth-year option. Right, so cheap, and then tags are cheap, and then the next tag is cheap. But so cash-wise, it's okay. Cap-wise, it sucks because the franchise tag hits the cap all at once. So, like, you can't spread that out like you normally would. But, you have a couple years of cheap. That's kind of not the problem. The problem is, at some point, if he gets free and continues to stay healthy and stays at this level, how high is it going to be? Like, you will have gotten a discount, which is awesome, but at some point you have to pay him. And so, like, that's really the issue is it looms over you that, like, if he does this, if you don't pay him, like, I don't know, $60 million a year or whatever, who knows, somebody might. So that's where it gets really hard, but not just right now.
Thanks for the time, Ian. Greatly appreciated. Enjoy whatever time off you might possibly even be imagining having. Enjoy it. You deserve it. Thanks again.
I appreciate it. I shopped for a tie for the Kentucky Derby today, so I'll be doing that unsuccessfully, and I will enjoy it. And it was great hanging out in Vegas with you as well.
Right back at you. Thanks for the time, Ian. Go. Hopefully you win some bag in Churchill Downs. Enjoy that. Take care.
I won't hold your breath.
You got it. It's Ian Rapoport, everybody, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.